going on, Hoops Freaks out there? My name is Justin Fensterman, and you're locked in, dialed into Hoops Freak Fensty, stories of the NBA from the greatest decade, or one of the greatest decades in the history of the league, the 1990s. Talking about some of your favorite players from the past that you might not have thought about for the last 30 years. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out previous Hoops Freaks Fensties and let me know by commenting some of your favorite players, some of your favorite storylines. What players got you into basketball? That's what this is about. It's a group discussion. It's about fun. It's about nostalgia. It's about remembering the great times and then reliving them again. And I want to thank AB, Adam Bernard, for always helping us relive these great moments, clips, pictures, nostalgia. It's all good. Today, instead of talking about a team, instead of talking about a championship run or a specific player, how about a draft class? And when I think of all of the draft classes, not only from the 1990s, but in NBA history, to me, my favorite, often regarded as the best draft class in the history of the NBA, the 1996 NBA draft class, in which I'm going to go over some of the best players to ever play the game and tell you why this draft class rocked. Now, what does it take for a draft class to rock? How about a couple of top 75 NBA players all time? How about a top 10 NBA player all time? And I know a lot of this is subjective, but at the same time, in 1996, not even picked in the top 10 in that draft, Kobe Bryant, number 13 overall. Kind of brings in a little bit of a wrinkle here on how Kobe Bryant got to Los Angeles, because he was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets. This 18-time All-Star, this 5-time NBA champ, 2-time Finals MVP, earned his way to LA at a Lower Merion High School in Pennsylvania. One of the first players to be drafted at a high school. Kevin Garnett was one of the players that ushered it in, and now Kobe Bryant, here we go, the very next year. But Kobe Bryant going to Los Angeles was actually part of a trade in order for the Lakers to get rid of some salary, sending Vlade Divac, their longtime center, to Charlotte in order to make room for Shaquille O'Neal joining the team. The Magic disrespected him. Now he's going to LA. And at the same time in this trade, Kobe Bryant going to Los Angeles too. A 25-point-per-game scorer, a rebounder, a clutch player, a MVP, one of the greatest of all time. When you look at Michael Jordan and you see him rocking the 90s, it always comes down to who's the next guy, who's going to be the next generational talent. Kobe Bryant was that guy. Kobe Bryant, number 8, the old school Los Angeles Lakers jersey, a little bit of the style from the old Minneapolis Lakers right there, right after they moved to Los Angeles. Kobe Bryant in the number 8 at the time, bald, soon enough would grow a fro, and as his hair grew, his career evolved to eventually winning a ring in 2000. But Kobe Bryant being sent from Charlotte to LA, almost actually the trade got messed up because Vlade Divac was actually threatening retiring because he loved being with the Los Angeles Lakers. Didn't happen though. Kobe Bryant ends up going to LA, and the duo of Kobe and Shaq rock the early 2000s. Kobe, by the way, coming off the bench the first few years. We actually found out about Kobe Bryant from the 1997 dunk contest. We knew how good he was, but to see the ups again, airness like Michael Jordan, hang time like Michael Jordan, the clutchness we were starting to see with the scoring, but it wasn't until a couple of years later, the Lakers getting rid of some more of their guards in order to make sure he has a nice starting job right there that he kept for the rest of his career. So there's one MVP. How about another? A guy who actually faced Kobe Bryant in the 2001 NBA Finals, 2001 NBA MVP, Allen Iverson. What kind of all-scorer comes off the bench? What kind of NBA comes off the bench? What kind of NBA all-star comes off the bench? Why Allen Iverson? A guy who didn't even really need to practice in order to be one of the best guards in the NBA in the 90s and early 2000s. Practice? We're talking about practice, man? Not a game. Practice. One of the best rants during a presser ever. Search Allen Iverson practice on YouTube and get ready to laugh. This guy comes into the league, first overall pick from Georgetown to the Philadelphia 76ers. And I hadn't seen quickness like that since John Stockton. John Stockton was one of the quickest guards. Now Allen Iverson is crossing up players his rookie year like Michael Jordan, starting the era that we would see a lot of in the early 2000s of the shoot first dominant guard. That was Allen Iverson. He was one of the guards that ushered that in. He would just take it on himself. He'd go one-on-one. He'd go ISO. He'd get to the basket. He's able to stretch out his arm and flip the ball off almost to the side of the backboard, and somehow it had enough spin to go towards the hoop and in. A guy who played with multiple injuries during multiple shots of his career and still was able to be as dominant, scoring nearly 27 points per game and dishing over 6 assists per outing too. We saw him in Philly. We saw him in Denver. We even saw him in Detroit and with the Memphis Grizzlies too. But one of the greatest driving guards, and I'll also say this, we saw Allen Iverson, for those, by the way, because these guys were also fashion icons. Allen Iverson was one of them in the early 2000s, but he was one of the first that we saw actually braid his hair in the second year. And all of a sudden, we saw a lot more players doing it in the late 90s. So a little bit of a fashion icon, Allen Iverson, too. Never ended up winning the championship. The Lakers end up winning in 5 games. But let's not forget when he stepped over Tyronn Lue. Got a couple of MVPs. How about a player that was once regarded as the greatest pure shooter in NBA history before Steph Curry took the title from him? I'm talking about Ray Allen, who was actually drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Just think about this for a second. Let time stop. Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. Whoa. Oh, how amazing would that have been? How great would that have been? But Minnesota already had a couple of shooting guards. So instead, what they do is they flip Ray Allen and a pick to the team that ended up selecting right before them, number 4, the Milwaukee Bucks, for Stephon Marbury. Minnesota needed a point guard and Milwaukee needed a shooting guard. So they swapped teams right there after being picked right after each other. But Ray Allen with the Bucks. For those that are NBA fans in the 2000s, you might know Ray Allen as a big-time shooter in Seattle and in Boston and in Miami. But when he was on the Milwaukee Bucks, this guy could drive. This guy took on other bigger players all the time. Very, very aggressive. He wasn't just shooting three after three, 40% from downtown, scoring nearly 19 points per game for his career. This guy was such a driver in Milwaukee, and I can only imagine with him showing those combo guard skills, he and Garnett would have made it work. Instead, we got a few years of Garnett and Stephon Marbury. Let's get another MVP in this mix. Pick number 15, and it seemed like for the promotion of this guy after the Suns drafted him, you saw him more with a hockey stick as a goof, because right from Canada, one of the greatest international players of all time, 2-time NBA MVP, Steve Nash, drafted by the Suns, ended up growing his bones and really becoming someone in Dallas, playing alongside Michael Finley and Dirk Nowitzki, literally dished over 8 assists per game. A 43% shooter from downtown and 90% from the free throw line. An excellent runner, great court vision, one of the greatest players, especially really rising in 2000 and then really owned the 2000s. Unfortunately, when he was on the Suns, that was during the Tim Donaghy stuff. We're not going to talk about that though, but let's just say his team got a little screwed. Just saying. But Steve Nash was one of the most exciting players to watch, especially in Dallas. His hair was short in Phoenix. As it grew longer, the skills grew bigger. That's Steve Nash, number 15, Canada's finest right there, a two-time MVP. Picked right before Steve Nash, as we now go to the B-listers of the 1996 draft class. Peja Stojakovic. You want to talk about good shooting, 40% from downtown, one of the best shooters of the 2000s. Peja Stojakovic, taken by the Sacramento Kings out of Yugoslavia, a three-time All-Star, also an NBA champion with Dallas. Peja Stojakovic, it almost seemed like he was hitting every single shot. You would see him light up the three-point shooting contest, but despite being drafted in 1996, he did not play in the NBA for 2 more years. So he was a rookie in the 1998-1999 lockout shortened season, but he was drafted in 1996, so he still counts as part of this draft class. I talked about Ray Allen, who was traded for Ray Allen. Actually, they were friends early on in life. Stephon Marbury goes to Minnesota, and for a few years, you saw how this Minnesota Timberwolves team finally making the playoffs, seeing what Garnett can be. These two were very in sync with each other until they weren't. And whose fault was that? Stephon Marbury, a very me player, two-time All-Star, was on the Wolves, the Nets, the Suns, the Knicks, but he was the dominant guard, took a lot of shots and took the ball himself, scoring over 19 points per game, in addition over 7 assists per contest. But that was the thing with Stephon Marbury. Solid driver, solid shooter, solid play in the 2001 All-Star game with Allen Iverson to give the East a nice little comeback win at a time where the West was just dominating the league. So that was good to see. And Stephon Marbury had some very clutch moments. But again, he always got in his own way. And he wasn't the best teammate. He didn't make players around him better. But damn, was he a skilled basketball player with one of the sweetest drives I've ever seen. How about another high school player? We've already had one with Kobe, Jermaine O'Neal, another high school player, this time a forward, a 6-time All-Star, and the 2002 NBA Most Improved Player. Jermaine O'Neal started his career on the Portland Trailblazers, and they had a number of bigs. He wasn't getting a lot of minutes. He complained. They ended up trading him to the Indiana Pacers, where he became one of the guys on the team. I mentioned that he was an All-Star. The problem with Jermaine O'Neal was that in 2004, just when he was at the prime, just when he was at the apex, the malice at the palace. And Jermaine O'Neal, as fans were pouring onto the court a little bit, Jermaine O'Neal might have slipped on some water or wetness on the court, and a driver punch from Jermaine O'Neal right to a fan, right in the head, got him a 25-game suspension. And unfortunately, as good as Jermaine O'Neal is, as solid of a forward as he is, as much of an all-star as he is, the malice at the palace is something that he will always be remembered participating in the fall of 2004. As we move up to the 6th pick of the 1996 NBA draft, how about a little shimmy right there? Or if that can even be called a shimmy. Here, I'll do it again. Antoine Walker, when he would hit a three-pointer, he would celebrate like he just won the lottery. You'd always see the little shoulder shake going down the court, kind of pissing off some of the opposition. But Antoine Walker out of Kentucky went to Boston, and you saw the scoring impact he can have here. He was a 3-time All-Star and did win a championship with the Miami Heat in 2006. But those days, those early days with Antoine Walker and Paul Pierce on the Celtics, you saw them start to build back up just a little bit. But by the time the Celtics were champs again in 2008, Antoine Walker was no longer on the team. But Antoine Walker scoring over 17 points per game and grabbing a lot of rebounds and a nice little shimmy every time he'd hit that three-pointer. Now we move on to the C-listers and honorable mentions of this draft class, this awesome draft class. We go right back near the top of the board, the second overall pick out of UMass. Marcus Camby goes to Toronto, later traded a couple of years later for Charles Oakley. He goes to the Knicks, and you saw Marcus Camby run the floor with any good big man. He could keep up with them. Fresh legs, big ups, a very awkward shot, literally a rainbow shot with the awkward release. But Marcus Camby was someone who blocked a lot of shots, nearly 2.5 per game, and grabbed nearly 10 rebounds per contest. But Marcus Camby, especially early on in those Knicks days, that thunderous tomahawk dunk that you saw him do, the way he ran the floor with the ball, he had no fear. Then he started suffering some injuries, but was able to overcome them for a huge career. But Marcus Camby, dunking, blocking, and all, is someone to be remembered, even though he's not an A-lister of this draft class. Third overall pick, Shareef Abdur-Rahim. Check out the Vancouver Grizzlies Hoops Freak Fensty for more information on why he was so dominant. But an 18-point-per-game scorer, a 2002 All-Star with the Atlanta Hawks. And when you think of the Vancouver Grizzlies, while a lot of people will think Big Country Bryant Reeves, I think of Shareef Abdur-Rahim and how dominant he was on that team during the mid and late 90s. Let's have a little bit of fun going to Lithuania and talking about the 20th pick in the 1996 NBA draft. Big Z Zydrunas Ilgauskas, a two-time All-Star, 7'3", a tall drink of water, spent most of his career with Cleveland playing with a young LeBron James. But Zydrunas Ilgauskas overcame early career injuries. And this was when he had hair. And while I've talked about some of these rookies that as their hair grew, like Kobe Bryant and Steve Nash, their play and role got better. For Zydrunas Ilgauskas, he got better and healthier the more hair he lost. And I'm all for that. But Zydrunas Ilgauskas was someone who had a bunch of post moves. You couldn't box the guy out. He was huge, but unfortunately fell short of winning an NBA championship, but still had his moments in the sun and a reliable center for multiple years. And to see a big man, because when these big guys suffer those lower body injuries, you rarely see them come back to form. It was amazing seeing Ilgauskas overcome the early career injuries where you barely remember him even with hair early on in Cleveland, and then was able to be a strong center he was. Derek Fisher, very strong guard. You think about Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. Well, who was operating the triangle offense with them? That's Derek Fisher, and he did a great job running it on the court. Off the court, as a coach, he did a horrible job, but the NBA had changed by the time he was coaching there in the 2010s. But Derek Fisher as a guard, clutch, a hustler, a good shooter, a good driver, sacrificed his body. And maybe his best moment of his career came in the 2004 playoffs when, with about 0.4 left to go, he gets the ball and throws it up, a quick shot, and scores and wins the game and immediately runs off the floor with his teammates, stunning the San Antonio Spurs. Derek Fisher played with multiple teams, and though he wasn't an all-star, he was still a 5-time champion. Couple of other players I want to mention that I loved watching. Kerry Kittles on the Nets. Mid-90s to late 90s there, and even in the early 2000s, Kerry Kittles, and with that backcourt of him and Jason Kidd that ended up going to the NBA Finals a couple of times, one of the most fun backcourts to watch. And Kerry Kittles was a very strong shooter, a 14-point-per-game scorer, also a solid defender on the perimeter, averaged over a steal and a half per contest too. And he was on the all-rookie second team, but 2 trips to the NBA Finals. Got to give some ups to Kerry Kittles, because besides the shooting, he was also someone that wasn't just hanging out at the arc. He was willing to cut, and he got to the basket. And then a 2-time champ with San Antonio, who was a decent forward, but no leader. A decent forward, had to mention, second-round pick, 44th overall, and that is Malik Rose. Do you need more convincing now? How great was this draft class? To me, the greatest draft class in the history of the NBA. Exciting players, all-stars, legends, top 75 guys of all times, MVPs, a top 10 player of all time in Kobe Bryant. Make sure you like and subscribe to Hoops Freak Fensty. New episodes come out every single Saturday. Follow me at Fensty Sports on X and Instagram. And not only like and subscribe, but comment. Let me know your favorite NBA draft classes too, so we can talk about them and relive some of the greatest players, teams, draft classes, and moments from a great era in the NBA, the 1990s. I'm Justin Fensterman. See you freaks later.